You can't be a leader without followers. And so how do you lead today? And how you lead today is very different than how they used to lead.
More and more we see female leaders in the workplace who have male subordinates. What can we do to help these relationships have more harmony?
Excellent question, because that's absolutely true, is that we are having more women oversee men. And of course, then we start having our gender differences surface and emerge. And one of the things that I see happening a great deal, and just did a webinar recently about the emotionally intelligent workplace, leading with gender awareness, is going back to some of these basic biological differences in terms of how the male and female brains differ. And so that at least the leaders are aware of that, and now they can employ strategies to better engage their male employees. And so it starts there, and I'll be doing some more on that. And that's part of what's coming out in my book, The Emotional Potential, how to uncover the natural happiness within by taking a look at some of these differences, biological differences. And so it really does, behoove the female leader to develop her emotional intelligence, to be very aware of who she is and how she manages herself, but then also to be aware of others, and then how she manages those relationships. And that's actually then carrying down, some education and training to the employee level so that they in turn understand some of these basic differences. So I see a lot more happening in the workplace, looking at not just generational cultural differences, but gender differences in terms of how people work.
I also find the body typing is a major area, because so often we're starting to see a lot of men who actually have more of the sensitive qualities that we typically attribute to women. And so in the workplace you see this because you're seeing a lot of women who have more of the masculine qualities that are coming into points of management and authority. And so the key to that is really understanding that person's strengths and the respect in the relationship and in the workplace, to where we can start to create the harmony that needs to happen in the workplace. So instead of looking at promoting a person to the highest level of incompetency, it makes more sense to change our society to where we reward a person for doing what they do best and allowing them to stay in that position.
I love what you're saying, because in the workplace, men and women have never worked before together. And so we have a lot of expectations that somebody's going to think and react the way we would. And I remember this lesson in my life was one of the first days that I began to realize men and women are really different. Marrying my wife was another layer onto that. But I remember as a therapist working 8 hours a day, seeing clients, I had an executive assistant. Her name was Helen. And Helen worked for me for many, many years. She was very well paid, just given her a raise. And a few weeks later, she said she wanted to quit. And so I said, well, why? You're getting paid more and you have complete freedom to do whatever you want. Those are things that would make me feel valued and appreciated. And she said, well, it's time for me to move on. I went, why? And she said, I just don't feel like you appreciate me. And I went, wow, tell me why. And she says, you don't even know what I do. Because I didn't know what she did. I knew she'd do everything that I didn't want to do. She organized my seminars, she got my clients to pay, she scheduled everything, she scheduled my life, she paid my bills, all this stuff. She was handling everything, and I was doing my job in my office. And I was getting paid, and she was getting paid, so everybody should be happy. Well, she didn't feel appreciated, so I went, why? And she says, well, you don't even know what I do. Now that's the irony of it, because for me, that's why I appreciated her so much, is I didn't know it. I didn't have to know what she did, and there was no drama. Everything just got done. So I'm like, wow. So I said, give me 2 weeks. And what I did is I took time to find out what she does. And then she stayed with me for many, many more years. She felt appreciated because every day, it wasn't a big therapy session, every day I took 5 minutes to check in with her, what's going on, and give her a chance to, share her frustrations, her successes, her wins. She stayed up late that night. This person didn't call back. Then she felt like I really knew what was going on. And then I learned that. So if I didn't know that, women would feel not appreciated.
That our growth and development doesn't stop when we go to work. And so appreciation is obviously a huge issue. And I think the other one is about growing. And I think one of the things which could help is a wonderful quote by Winnicott, who is an English psychoanalyst and pediatrician, and he said, it's the curiosity of the mother that locates the baby in the world. And so I think you spoke a little bit towards that. It's the curiosity that we're interested in the person, what she is doing. And there's a wonderful term I like a lot, also working with couples, about tracking. Tracking the baby. You're not being overly involved, you're not being restrictive, but you're also not neglectful. You know where the baby is. And we do this also with partners. We're tracking our partners, and it's actually very pleasing. It's actually a wonderful feeling when partners track each other. And I think that probably also applies to the workplace, that you want to track where people are, where your employees are, what their interests are, what they're doing, finding out, and therefore they have a sense, they can grow.
Workplace has changed. We all know it. There's a lot more women in the leadership positions at many companies across the globe. If you are in one, what the panel is suggesting today is to pay attention to what your people need. Be curious and also be mindful of your own individual skills. Get help if you need it, and certainly reach out to these guys.